doing good, huh?
Yeah, I transplanted them
In
in
bigger
the
pots?
pots, a little bit bigger pots. But what about winterizing, since they're not going to be in a like the ones over here? Put them in a garage,
Yeah, if you could put lights on them.
or I could bring them in the house and just.
Even if you could bring them in the house and still give them a little bit of supplemental light, like one of those little LED grow lights from Amazon or something, that'll really help it, because the citrus will be developing fruit over the winter, and then that matures. Those decopons are mature for us in like anywhere from March into April and May.
Yeah.
So it's challenging growing citrus if you don't have a greenhouse, because some of them will mature earlier in the year, but some of them need kind of like a cooling period. So
Right.
the decopons are one of those that just take a little bit longer because the fruit can be so big. Oh, that's a pretty good group. So I'm gonna stop over here by this little bridge, and if everybody just wants to kind of stay on one side of the road, just in case there's any vehicles coming down, we're just gonna stop right here. I'll give a little introduction. But yeah, feel free to, you can come down over here to my left as well. You can spread out. And at any time during our little walk and talk, if you just want to venture off, feel free to do so. This is going to be kind of what we do here at Baker Creek, kind of focusing on our propagation and production and how much fun we get to have and all the different things we get to do. Can everybody hear me without the microphone?
No.
You like the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sometimes it goes in and out and just kind of fluctuates with sound. So welcome everybody. If it's your first time, thanks for coming out. It's great to have everybody here. This is usually not this busy, so it's really nice to have a lot of people coming and checking out the farm. My name's Andrew. I'm the senior horticulturalist here at Baker Creek. I've been here for almost 8 years now, and I've seen this place grow and change a lot. It's been really exciting to be a part of. When I first started working here, there was 3 greenhouses, and now we have 27 greenhouses. There's a big emphasis on greenhouse production, especially with climate variability and climate change. The greenhouses give us consistency, and they allow us to grow year-round. So Baker Creek is not your typical farm. Everything that we grow here on the farm stays here on the farm. We don't sell any fruit or vegetables or flowers, so everything is used in-house. We've got a restaurant. The owner and his family are plant-based eaters, so they eat whatever we can grow for them. And then a lot of the surplus gets to be enjoyed by the employees. There's about 100 employees here at the farm. Well, at the company, there's probably only 20 or 30 of us at most that actually work on the farm. So you can grow a lot of food and you can make it disappear pretty quickly with 100 people. Pretty nice. So behind us, these are our main seed starting greenhouses. Everything that we grow here on the farm starts their little lives here. We're growing year round, so we're constantly starting seeds almost every week to bi-weekly, because we're constantly taking something out of a garden or taking it out of a greenhouse. Our main focus here is to create media and documentation and research. We do have a development team now, breeding team, which they did a tour at 11. Tomorrow they're doing one at 1 p.m. I believe. So we get to try and create new things to introduce to the gardening world, which is really fun and exciting. But some of those things take a long time to develop. An average crop to go from a first generation cross into a stable produce or product can take anywhere from 7 to 10 years. But the greenhouses allow us to have multiple generations, multiple harvests in 1 year, so we can accelerate those timelines pretty quickly with the the use of greenhouses and also having friends in other parts of the world. So when it's wintertime here, we can send a project to a friend in South America where it's their summertime, and they can kind of accelerate one more generation for us. We get the pleasure of growing the entire catalog in a year, so about 1,300 varieties. And then in the trial department, which I get to be a part of as well, we bring in about 1,000 more varieties. So in a year, there's anywhere from 2,000 to almost 3,000 varieties of fruits and vegetables and herbs and flowers that we get to grow at this facility. The farm itself is around 100 acres, but we're only using a small fraction of it. We have about a little over 2 acres of just greenhouse space. And then there's probably about 3 more acres of miscellaneous gardens. We have these raised bed gardens, which are mostly just trials. So we're growing things out to see what it looks like, how it grows, and we're documenting that for seed packets, the catalog, online usage, videos, social media stuff. We live in a world where social media is so dominant, and that's how a lot of people get exposed to some of those varieties these days. So it's not just like a catalog shows up in your mail. Most people are like scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, and that's how they're finding out about new varieties, things like that. We also have some perennial projects that we're working on, which we'll get a chance to see. I'm also doing a tour at 5 o'clock today where we're kind of focusing more on just the trees that we're growing here at the property. So like I was saying, our propagation is very diverse with 3,000 different types of varieties. We're trying to do everything consistently, just like a home gardener would do, whether it's in a raised bed or in a container gardening, things like that. We're trialing to see how hard they would have with germinating a variety, or if there's any kind of special stratification periods that we need to communicate that either online or in our catalog. And if we are having issues, then we know that, well, a customer is probably going to have issues with germinating or propagating that seed. So it might not be something that actually makes it to the catalog. That's why we trial so many different varieties, so that we can get a good outlook on how easy or how hard a customer may have with a selection that we are offering. We also are growing some seeds here at the farm. A lot of people ask, do you guys grow all the seeds that you sell? And the answer is no. We actually work with about 150 or so farmers, some internationally, but most of them are domestic here in the US, and they help produce a bulk of the seed that we sell. Now there are still some varieties that we work with other companies, kind of like a wholesaler or other breeders and other companies. We've got some really great friends in Europe and in Japan that help produce some really neat varieties that we get to team up with and introduce those to the US market. The owner has been kind of like one of the first to bring certain varieties to America, so it's been really exciting to see some of those things here at our gardens or in our greenhouses before it gets to go out into the rest of the world. It's been really fun and exciting. Are there any questions so far? No? Well, I'll just explain about these greenhouses real quick. Over here you've got 3, 4, 5, and there's 6, 7, 8, and 9, and this is actually 6B. Most of our houses are heated houses. We do have maybe about 8 or 10 out of the 27 that are unheated greenhouses, so that gives us a chance to trial crops through the deep winter with just an unheated greenhouse, and we're able to see how well spinach and kale and other cold hardy crops do with minimal to no protection, and then we can pass that information off to other gardeners and growers, things like that. For the most part, everything is on an automatic irrigation. Some of the propagation houses are still hand water. We do utilize some flooding or overhead misting, but because we're growing so many different things at different stages, hand watering is probably the best application to help monitor all those water needs. Here at the farm, we're almost there. We're almost transitioned to 100% organic as far as fertigation. We've transitioned to 100% organic in our pest management. We utilize an integrated pest management program. If you don't know what integrated pest management is, it's where you are kind of weighing the economic threshold of what to use and when to use it and how to use it. Because we could spend a lot of money on beneficial insects, or we could spend a lot of money on a organic certified pesticide or fungicide, but you have to weigh those options and the best methods of controlling that pest problem. Obviously outside we don't deal with as many pests, especially during this time of the year when we've got tons of flowers growing. We bring in a lot more pollinators and predatory insects. But inside the greenhouses, these are isolated environments, and some of them can be what we would call sterile environments. So we have to bring in nature, at least the nature that we want, because nature that we don't want somehow and always makes their way in. So when you have a pest like an aphid or spider mite or a thrip or some other kind of pest insect, there are insects out there that will eat them or help combat those problems that you're having. So there's a lot of great resources online about pest management, integrated pest management, and using beneficial insects. Sometimes those beneficial insects don't always live as long as you would like them to, because they might run out of a food source in the greenhouse. So within that integrated pest management program, we're constantly monitoring and inspecting for those pest problems, and whether it's easier to use a simple liquid to control that insect, or yes, let's bring in predatory early to control it, and then it stabilizes throughout its growing season. Are there any questions about that? Any kind of pest questions? Most people always ask, like, oh, what do you guys do about squash bugs? Do you got a question? Yeah, so like insectaries. Yeah, so the question was, what about like plants to help keep your beneficial insects around? So because we're growing so quickly here and crops don't stay in as long, so we don't actually have as many, we don't utilize as many insectary plants, but there are a lot of great plants that you can grow in your gardens to keep those beneficial insects around. I like to tell people, instead of just tearing out your cilantro when it starts to bolt, just leave those in there, because those little cilantro flowers will actually attract tons of predatory wasps. And the predatory wasps will attack a lot of soft-bodied insects. Same with like sweet alyssum. Sweet alyssum is a great host plant for a lot of beneficial insects. If you plant a very small amount of sweet alyssum, you will see your aphid populations drop drastically and almost be able to be controlled, because it's attracting some of those beneficial wasps and other insects, things like that. We have used ladybugs before, but a lot of the ladybugs are kind of wild harvested, so it's not as sustainable, so we don't really do that as much. Like, we don't introduce praying mantis anymore, because a lot of the praying mantis that you buy online are actually Asian praying mantis that are non-native, and they'll actually eat our native praying mantis. So yeah, we try to balance that out by creating a habitat. We'll find native praying mantis and sometimes bring them into the greenhouses where they can breed and do certain things. The perennial houses, they tend to have a longer lifespan with the beneficial insects, but the annuals, sometimes there might still be beneficials in there, but when we're tearing it out and we're flipping a house going to the next crop, sometimes those beneficial insects come out, so we have to reintroduce those beneficial insects. That's a great question. Squash bugs, on the other hand, good luck. There's not really a one kill all solution. Squash bugs, especially here in Missouri, are very, very challenging, and a lot more people are using more and more chemicals to combat insects, so we're actually creating more super bugs. And the best thing that you can do is choose the best choice that you have. You don't always have the choice of organic, but being mindful of how that affects the ecosystem and how you're going to breed certain insects to superbugs, because there will be bugs that will be adapted to those chemicals that we use, and then those chemicals aren't going to work on them anymore. So you have to choose a bigger, badder, more powerful chemical, and in return we're going down a really slippery slope to where you're going to have to use some genetic modification to control things, and that's not our purpose here. Our purpose here is to create an environment that's better than what we got to. So when I got here, there was still some conventional usage that was happening, and over the years we've created healthier soils and healthier environments. But we still have our challenges. You know, you're always going to have your challenges, especially at this scale. The pest management is almost like a daily ritual of inspection and application of either beneficials or spraying applications. As far as organic fertilization goes, we still utilize some of the conventional NPK synthetic fertilizers for propagation or for certain nutritional needs where it's not being treated quickly enough, and it's mostly for a crop that is a high value crop that we need to either save seed on, or if it's super rare or old and we just need to get that crop through, we may utilize a synthetic fertilizer to keep it healthy. But we do know that using synthetic fertilizers is not sustainable for soil health, and we want to build soil life instead of destroy soil life using synthetic fertilizers. So we like to practice, the farm manager and myself like to practice a lot of Jadam, or Korean natural farming. So we're collecting indigenous microorganisms from our local environment, and we are incubating them into some of these greenhouses, but also creating fertilizers. And now we're starting to create some of these pesticides and fungicides through Jadam and Korean natural farming sister practices. It's really neat. You should look into it. Jadam, Jadam. Got any questions so far? Any more questions? All right, so when you're walking around the gardens and the greenhouses, you might see some different colored tags. When you're growing 3,000 different types of varieties, it's really easy to get lost and confused in diversity. So we utilize some color coding. A lot of the yellow tags that you see in the gardens or in the greenhouses, like with the seed starting varieties, a lot of those are varieties that we have in our collection. Some of them are varieties that you can go up to the seed store and acquire, or it might be something from our seed bank that we have in Seymour. Our seed bank has like over 5,000 varieties, and sometimes we pull some of those varieties out of the seed bank in order to freshen those seeds up. Seeds have a finite life. Some of them it's 1 or 2 years, some of it's decades, and sometimes you can push those boundaries by freezing the seeds. But we maintain it in a non-frozen environment because we want it to be more of a working seed bank. We want to maintain and have that relationship with those seeds and those plants that we're working with. So yeah, yellow tags are varieties that we have, and then the white tag varieties are new, whether it's from something that y'all sent to us or if it's from a different company. We get to trial things from companies that are here domestically, but also international companies, just to see what they're offering, see if it's comparable to what we offer, and we're just testing and evaluating things. It's really fun and exciting to be able to grow so many different things just to take a look at it. And then we do have like some different colors for breeding or seed stock increases. I don't think I talked about seed stock increase, did I? So some of our seed production team has transitioned. Some of our projects we can produce enough seed here at the farm for a particular variety that we could go ahead and start selling at the end of the year. There might be 1 or 2 actually this year that we do that with. But for the most part, because Baker Creek has gotten to the size that it is, we contract out other growers to help increase that seed for us. So what we're doing is we're creating a seed stock here at the farm. We're creating enough seed to send off to 1, 2, maybe 3 different farmers to help produce that at a much larger scale. We might grow 1 or 2 pounds worth of seed, and we might ask for 50 or 100 or kilos worth of seed back. So another part of that program is getting that seed back from those farmers and growers and evaluating it here at the farm. During our purity trials, we want to make sure that the Etuda sweet pepper is still yellow or is still orange and still sweet. If somebody was growing it on their farm and they were too close to a hot pepper, we want to make sure to grow that seed back out and make sure that sweet pepper is still sweet and it didn't get mixed with, you know, some kind of jalapeno or something. So that's another part of the programs that we have here at the farm. So 3 and 4, 3 is empty right now. It's kind of why we closed it off to the public. We actually just put new plastic on it. A lot of people ask about the plastic. I believe it's an 8 mil greenhouse plastic. We do double layer plastics. You could do single layer, but we do a double layer. You can see there's a nice air bubble in the middle that gives us a little extra insulative value. It is just plastic, so that's why we utilize heaters to run in the winter time. The propagation houses will probably only stay between 45 and 55, depending on the projects that we're growing in those spaces. We do try to be as conscious as possible about our projects and when we're growing it. We don't want to be growing tomatoes in January. But we do grow tomatoes in January. We actually start some of our tomatoes as early as December, and we'll get those things 3 or 4 feet tall, and then they get into a greenhouse by March, and we have tomatoes by May. So that's how we get really, really early tomatoes when everybody's waiting for tomatoes till July. So, but then for the main production houses, they're way down over the hill. There are 17 30 by 90 greenhouses over there. I believe 8 of them are unheated, and the other 11 or 9 are heated. So with so many greenhouses, it can cost a lot of money to keep them warm through the winter. So some of the projects come to a halt. We shut down some of the greenhouses, but we'll walk through the tree houses. These tree houses that we have down here, we're trying to put plants in there that will survive at 40 degrees. So a lot of the citrus that you'll see today, a lot of them can actually handle below 30 degrees, just not long periods of time. We had one greenhouse that the heater broke over the weekend when nobody was here, and that greenhouse dropped down to about 19 degrees for 2 days, and a lot of the trees just defoliated, but they grew right back. So if it can't survive at 40 degrees, we will replace it with something else. So part of our job is kind of like being at a botanical garden, and we're like curators that help tend to a lot of the collection that we've amounted so far. So yeah, we are actually starting like a little nursery. It's actually up there behind the seed store. We're offering some of the varieties that you could buy in seed form, but in plant form. But usually that's in the spring where there's a big demand for peppers and tomatoes and eggplants, and some people just want one tomato plant. I don't need 50 tomato seeds when I only want one plant. So we kind of are trying to offer that to some of the gardeners and growers that just want one tomato or one pepper instead of a whole packet of seeds, and they might not be the best at seed starting, and it's really confusing and challenging. So we do utilize certain techniques that some people don't have at home. So we have heating mats. So we have a little mat that you can plug in. You can control the temperature. A lot of seed varieties, they can just be planted, you know, at a basic standard temperature, anywhere from 55 to 75 degrees. They'll germinate no problem. But a lot of the super hot peppers, they want to germinate at 80 or 80 plus degrees, and they'll germinate much more rapidly for us. We do utilize some grow lights, especially during the winter time. The greenhouse behind you over there with the wet wall, that house is now a nursery house, but it used to have raised beds. It used to be full of LED lights, and we could influence plants to be producing at a out of season time. We were growing poppies with big, beautiful blooms in January and February. So just through a little bit of manipulation of light and temperature, nutrition, you can grow things well out of season. So some of the lights that we use are just some basic LED grow lights. In this house over here, we do have some ceramic metal highlights, which are kind of a all spectrum. They kind of glow more of a yellowy white or more of a bluish white. We don't really utilize any high pressure sodium lights or anything like that. So yeah, feel free to start walking through if you'd like. Our seed starting greenhouse is over here. One thing that I didn't mention during the fertilizing, so we utilize a device called a dosatron, which you'll see when you walk in there. It's a little blue device right by our hose reel. We can fill up our concentrate fertilizer, whether it's organic or synthetic. I think right now we're using an organic solution, and we can have that concentrate and we can dilute it to the right ratio, 1 to 50, 1 to 100, and then we can put that on directly to the plants. We can do that in the propagation houses, and then we have some mobile devices that we have that we can take it right out to a garden or to a greenhouse, plug that into our irrigation line, and feed through that device. So greenhouse number 5 right here, there's a few folks starting to walk into it. This was actually the first greenhouse that was here when I got here. It's the oldest greenhouse. It actually just got a new layer of plastic a few weeks ago. So it's been running for almost 10 years with with old plastic. It was part of the owner's first perennial collection, so there are some figs and guavas in here. Some of the figs are over a decade old now. The figs, if you keep them from freezing, they'll just stay a nice trunk, and they'll come back really early for us compared to the figs that we grow outside. The figs outside tend to not mature till about this time of the year, September, October. So the greenhouses allow us to get earlier ripening on some of these fruit varieties that normally wouldn't ripen this quickly outside. Next, we're going to kind of walk over to this next set of greenhouses. So we do utilize shade cloth. It gets hot as Hades here in Missouri. We see temperatures 100 plus. So we utilize shade cloth on some, if not most, of the greenhouses. People ask, well, what kind of shade is that? It's a 50% shade. We've used as low as 30% shade and as high as 70% shade. 70 is a little too deep, really good for growing ferns if you want. But for the most part, 50% is like a really good all-around shade cloth. So like I was saying before, greenhouse 6, it used to have some cedar raised beds in it, and there was grow lights, and we were doing all kinds of neat growing projects over the winter. But as we've expanded, we needed more nursery space. So when we start things over there in 3 and 4, and they're not, the space isn't quite ready, whether it's in the garden or in another greenhouse, they'll come over to this space where they may get up potted into a larger container, and they kind of wait their turn in their greenhouse or in their garden. So we do utilize some of the wet walls. A wet wall is an evaporative cooling method. So that membrane on that back wall, it's kind of made out of cardboard. What happens is that when the exhaust fans kick on, they're pulling air through the back of that greenhouse. Most greenhouses just have a vent that opens up, but when you utilize the wet wall, that has water down that membrane. Pulling water through that membrane, that ambient air down. It is almost impossible. There are certain techniques like utilizing evaporative cooling to help create a cooler greenhouse, but it's almost impossible to make the temperature inside a greenhouse the same temperature that it is outside. Even using air conditioning, you're using a greenhouse, it's like a big magnifying glass. So once the sun is hitting that thing, it's warming up rapidly. So, but if it's 90 degrees outside, we can keep that greenhouse 85 or 95, you know, depending on the shade cloth and the evaporative cooling. But we can stay pretty close, but we're rightly just above the ambient temperature utilizing the wet walls. This year we're experimenting with a very fine micron misters instead of the evaporative cooling walls. We're just looking for something to utilize or to use less water. And those wet walls can use a lot of water. We actually have 4 wells here at the farm, 2 potable wells and 2 ag wells. So the 2 potable wells are things that feed the warehouses and the restaurant, the Gettles, the owner's home and everything. Those are wells where the water is tested on a regular basis, so that we can just drink right from the water if we needed to. And then we have ag wells that are specifically for just greenhouses and for the gardens. So there's one ag well that feeds all these greenhouses and the gardens in this vicinity. There's one ag well that feeds the 17 production houses, the Wallapini, that's about 15,000 square feet, and then all our field production out there. And then there's 2 potable wells, one up in the village and then one down here by the warehouses. This big building right here, this contains a giant 10,000 gallon cistern. So the farm manager and I are working on getting the flood tables wrapped up for the wintertime. And we want to recycle that water as much as possible instead of filling the tables up and then draining it away, because some of these greenhouses will use thousands of gallons of water in a day. So we want to recycle that water as much as possible versus just using it and losing it. That's what that big shed is. It's part of our flood table system. So greenhouse number 7 over here. This used to be an annual production house, but we've transitioned over to a perennial house. We do some annuals here and there. Some of the turmerics and gingers or some of the grading projects here and there. All the raised beds on the outside edges, those are actually recycled from the greenhouse right next door. We broke all those raised beds down, brought them over here, refilled them. So we grow about 50 different types of carrots on the farm. And those carrots vary in size, anywhere from 2 inches to almost 5 feet long. Our biggest one is almost 5 feet right now. We're trying to get past the 5 foot mark. We're growing some in some 8 foot boxes this year. So yeah, these raised beds are for carrots that range anywhere from 10, 12, or over 12 inches in length. So we fill those raised beds up with some of the native topsoil, blend it with compost and sand. We might charge it up with a little bit of manure. Recently we've been top dressing because after years and years, the beds kind of settle down and get lower. So we've been top dressing those raised beds with a product from our friends at Royal Gold. It's called Planting Mix. It's a blend of coconut coir and like a composted forest material, like a kind of a woody, very fine woody material. And that kind of helps retain the moisture. And I found that planting mix is just great for seed starting, creating a seed bed. So in this greenhouse, this is our more tropical-like greenhouse. So there's ice cream bean tree, there's a Suriname cherry, there's peanut butter trees, there's blackberry jams, there's jabatucabas, there's longans, there's Thai guavas. We have some ornamental gingers like this one right up front. It's a variegated ginger, has these big beautiful blooms, very fragrant. but it's not a culinary ginger. You wouldn't want to eat it. I've tried some of them before and they kind of taste like soap. So it's not that great, but there's different types of gingers and turmerics. Our tree collection is about close to 80 different types of trees now. You'll see some on the left that are a little bit newer. Some sapodillas, some avocados, trying some lychees. So we have to keep these trees dwarf because we're limited on height. So we're constantly pruning on them and whacking on them. That big viney thing, that's a new one. That's all in 1 year's worth of growth. I think we planted it in like May. So it was from a little tiny cutting. It's a Sacha Inchi. It's a Peruvian peanut. It produces this little fruit on the out. Like peanuts grow in the ground, if you don't know that. And this is a peanut-like nut that grows on the outside. It's a big vining plant. It's pretty interesting. So.
Do you have a secret for planting carrots? Just
Yeah.
trying to get them in a row, or do you just thin them? Plant them heavy and thin them?
So we do plant densely and have to come in and thin, but the trick with carrots is consistent moisture. You have to keep that seed bed consistently moist. You'll see one where we were doing a trial of some smaller carrots right there in the front.
Right here?
Yeah, so some of them have really spotty germination. Usually what we do, which we didn't do with this one, was that we'll make our little seed bed, make a little furrow, put that seed in there,
You just
cover it
sprinkle
very
that?
lightly. You can surface sow carrots, but some people utilize like burlap or cardboard and cover it and lift it up and wait for it to germinate, and those seeds will root in. But if you're kind of doing your standard, make little furrows and plant them in there, a key reminder that I tell people is that you always want to plant your seed about twice as deep as it is thick. So if it's a 1/2 inch thick seed, you want to put that thing probably about 1 inch or 2 down. But if it's a really small seed, you don't want to put it very far down. It's almost surface sown or just barely covered. And with carrots, it's consistent moisture until you see germination.
That's
And that
probably
might
where
mean misting it every day till you see some kind of germination happening.
Okay.
So we'll bring in a hose and we'll overhead water for a few days, upwards of a week. Usually it's about 7 to 10 days for carrots to see some kind of germination. But consistent moisture is the key until it germinates, and then we plant them. So you'll see that we have a drip line, so we use drip tape here on the farm. Drip tape is just a little plastic tube that when the irrigation kicks on, it tightens up and it looks like a little hose. And there's little pinholes throughout that, and you can get ones that are 4 inches apart, 6, 10, 12, upwards of 2 feet or more, and then you can plant specifically right by those emitters. Or if you use a 4 or 6 inch space drip tape, you can see consistent moisture saturation all around the drip line. Especially with 4 inch, you'll get a nice wide, about 3 to 4 inches on each side of the drip line will give you a nice even soil moisture.
So, like would straw, cover it with straw, would that work?
Yeah, but it might be too much.
Too
It might be
much?
too thick.
Okay.
So we just planted one last carrot project. We usually plant carrots through August, once a week in August, and maybe one more in September, and that'll give us carrot production all winter long. So these were carrots that were planted in maybe like June, and that's about the growth that we're getting. So these will be carrots that probably be harvesting around Thanksgiving or going into December. But then our fall planted will be from like December, January, February, March, and we can just pull carrots right out of the ground all winter long.
Okay.
So outside, you can get those established in June, and they start looking like this. And then a lot of the carrots are really cold hardy, so they might just want like a light row cover or piece of plastic to cover them when you get snow or something. But you can pull those carrots right out of the ground all winter long, and they actually taste better as the temperature gets lower.
No kidding.
So then that's one one thing that we have to utilize with synthetic fertilizers, so using organics, it's a relationship with microbiology. Microbes are more active when the soil is warmer. When the soil temperatures start dipping below 40, the microbes really start slowing down. So the efficiency of organic fertilizer isn't very high. So we still might utilize like a calcium nitrate, like a 15.500. Calcium and nitrogen are the two most heavily used nutrients by plants, but they're also water soluble. So the more you water, the more those nutrients are going to disappear. So some of those things are used more regularly. Our feeding program is like we're feeding somewhere something every week because we have so many greenhouses and gardens. So we do utilize this year we've been using a 777 organic water soluble powder. It's a byproduct from corn. It's like corn steep liquor, and it's been extracted and dehydrated and comes in this powder. You use warm water, and then we're feeding that, and then the following week we would switch to a microbial solution. So we partner with a worm farm about 20-30 minutes west of here, and he brings over fresh worm castings. And what we're doing is we're making an extract every week. We let that sit for about 24 hours, and we're pulling out the bacteria and some of those other microbes out of that worm casting, and then we shoot it out through our drip lines. So we go back and forth between a fertilizer and a microbial solution, whether it's bacterial or fungal dominant. So we're transitioning into more fungal dominant fertilizers here in the farm, in the perennial houses. A lot of annuals thrive in a more bacterial dominant environment. So because that soil is being cultivated more regularly, you kind of destroy the hyphae and the fungal web of the soil, but it's really hard to destroy the bacteria even with tilling. So you'll see in large-scale conventional agriculture, like their cornfields and their bean fields, they have really, really high bacterial dominance because they're constantly tilling and tilling and tilling. But we're seeing that when you increase fungal dominancy, it actually helps with even weed pressure. So we're starting to utilize more wood chips in these perennial houses, and just recently we inoculated the citrus houses with the giant wine cap mushroom spawn. So hopefully in the next year or so we'll start seeing mushrooms popping up. We want to create more of a fungal dominancy because in nature, this forest behind us, it has a high fungal dominance. So that's why we collect the indigenous microorganisms out of here, and we help inoculate the greenhouses that might be too high in bacterial dominance.
So are you just talking about bringing leaves in from the forest then? Or like, I don't understand exactly how you're bringing it in.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how do you collect indigenous microorganisms? So in Korean natural farming, there's a technique where you take white rice and you put it in some kind of natural container. We made these wooden boxes with little slits on the bottom. They use bamboo. But what you're doing is you're boiling this rice and you're gonna take it out to the woods and you're gonna look somewhere in the forest. Right now it's been really dry, so you're not seeing as much of it. Usually in the spring is a better time. You're gonna move some of those leaves and you're looking for that white hyphae, that strand of fungus that's moving around. You move some of those leaves back, you put your box of rice there, move some of the leaves back, and within 24 to 48 hours you can go back and you lift the lid on that box and it's going to be full of different colored slimes and fungal blooms. We take that rice and we're extracting it using a sugar solution, and the sugar solution also stabilizes and makes it shelf stable. And then you can take that sugar solution and you can dilute it, you can spray it foliar, you can inject it into the soil. There's other microbial solutions that you can make I highly recommend looking into Jadam for you. Like,
It
their
explains how to
JMS.
do that in the book.
Yep, yep. You can get the book online. There's free PDFs.
I've got it, I
There's-
just haven't read it all yet.
Yeah, look into the microbial solutions. You utilize this potatoes, and you're using a little bit of sea salt, and you're using like a handful of that nice fungal-rich soil.
But
And you're
you're
putting it
cooking-
in there.
You're cooking the potatoes or the rice.
Yep, you're
before
cooking
you
the
put it out
potatoes
there?
and the rice. So the microbes are attacking that starchy resource.
Gotcha.
That's their food source.
Okay.
And they're going in there and they're eating that.
All right. Interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
When you use the worm tea, the liquid, how do you know how strong it is? I mean, y'all probably test it, or do you?
No.
Because you know, I've done worms and I've done compost tea and all that, but every time I go to pour it on there, I'm like, how much do I use?
Totally. You can. There's always too much of a good thing. So
Yeah, 'cause I don't
with the microbes, when you're using like worm tea and you're doing an extract, it can buffer when you're using it in the soil. The soil has a much better buffer than in container growing. So you can overcharge in a container really easily compared to doing it in the soil. So I'll take 4 or 5 pounds of that worm castings and I'll soak it in a tea bag for 24 hours, and then I take that 5-gallon bucket and I'll send it through this entire house. So one 5-gallon bucket gets put out through this entire greenhouse. But I'm also doing
Diluting it
it
at all?
every other week.
Are you having to dilute it at
No.
all?
No,
Always
because I
kinda-
use that dosatron, because that dosatron, I have it set. I'm pretty sure the ones that are for this greenhouse are 1 to 50, so it uses 1 part concentrate to 50 parts water.
See that? I still get confused. It's like, well, half a gallon of water and half tea, and see what happens.
Yeah.
But I'm always afraid it's going to fry the foliage, so I usually kind of put it around the base.
Yeah, so what I've noticed too, in school I did a soil block. You know what soil blocks are? I did an experiment showing all these different types of ratios and different types of soils and mixtures to use. And I noticed that if you use too much worm castings, seedlings don't really need any food.
Right.
You can grow things in plain Jane, nothing almost. You know, it'll germinate in a paper towel. It's when it grows out of that cotyledon stage into the true leaves, then it really starts needing food. But you can use too much. I did one where it was like 10%, 20%, 30%, 40 and 50%. And those up there in the 30, 40, and 50, the seedlings got fried. They just were not healthy little seedlings. But in that 10 and 20% mixtures, they were great. They were really healthy, really dark green. So it all depends on your application.
Sure.
Like your garden, you could probably make a 4 or 5 pound concentrate and turn that 5 gallons into 20 gallons. And it's always easier to do less of a concentration and do that more frequently
Right.
than to go too much too fast, and then you're dealing with that plant having to recover by needing to be watered down and flushed out pretty much. So
Thank you. Not too much.
yes. I don't up front. No, those aren't the big ones. Yeah, it's in the greenhouse 6.
Real big ones.
Yeah, that's not enough to use that. Say utilize a lot today. We utilize. So these are really cool. This has been a really fun project to be a part of. This is greenhouse number 8. This is greenhouse number 9. This is primarily a citrus collection, but there are some really neat things like white pomegranates and avocados, pineapple guavas. But the owner really loves citrus. It's really easy to grow. There's actually a guy here on YouTube who's talking about citrus, and he grows his citrus like just in the ground and mounds up wood chips around it, just throws a quick piece of plastic over top of it, and he's utilizing compost as his feeding source. So we utilize propane. It's just what we have. It's what the owner wants to use, and that's what we do. This house will probably stay about 30 to maybe 40. We might crank it up to 40 in February, but this house may only stay 35 when we crank it up to 40. So the citrus can handle below 30. We've seen it just fine. We've seen it go through at 29 degrees, no problem. Most of the citrus collection is a variety that the owner really loves. It's called a Decopon, also known as a Citrus Shiranui in the nursery industry. In the grocery store, you'll find it named Sumo Orange. The Sumo oranges are still really expensive and really small, but the ones that we get to grow here, we've gotten ours up to about 4 pounds. It looks like a grapefruit. And in the store, they sell for $2.99 a pound, I think, $2 to $3 a pound. So nobody's gonna buy an $8 or $12 orange. So a lot of these oranges are utilized by the owner. The employees get to have some. They do it in the restaurant. He sends it off to his friends and family. There's mandarins. There's Australian finger limes back in there. We're trying Kaffir limes do really well here. We're trying a grapefruit. There's some yuzus next door. There's blood orange and Palestinian sweet limes, bergamots, different kinds of tangerines and kumquats, other mandarins like the Kishu mandarin up here. This is a really great dwarf variety. If you can ever get your hands on it, it's one of my favorites. It's like the little cuties that you buy in the store, but really easy to grow in containers. You can maintain it at that height of about 3 or 4 feet and move it in and outside really easily. Probably the main pest that people ask about that we deal with are mealybugs. Also, the ants tend to farm the mealybugs and the aphids, so you kind of have to control the ants if you want to control some of those pests sometimes too. The wood chips have been helping with the dust. You know, we used to grow nasturtiums as like a living ground cover, but now, as you can see, the canopy has gotten so dense that there's not a lot of light on the ground to do any annual production like we used to. So we got the chance to plant these trees when they're about as big as that Kishu right up front. So they've been in the ground for about 5 years now. Some of these trees, like this mystery mandarin, this was in the owner's collection before I got here, and he said, yeah, just throw it in the ground. This one right here will produce 2, maybe 300 mandarins this year. Some of the other ones will produce hundreds. We've pulled thousands of oranges out of both of these houses. It's been really fun and exciting. The collection of citrus, so citrus tends to bloom. You have some varieties that are ever bearing, like the Australian finger lime, one of the other kumquats back there. It kind of just keeps blooming and keeps putting on. But most of the citrus will bloom in the late spring, early summer. These houses smell amazing, usually about May, end of May into June, and it's just full of orange blossoms. And then they all kind of ripen at different stages. We've had, now the collection, we get ripe citrus as early as December, and we have ripe citrus as late as May. So, and then there's kind of a pause, other than a couple here and there. But the yuzus are some of the first to produce for us. It's a Japanese lemon type that's used a lot in sauces, other culinary practices. But yeah. No pollinators needed. Wind. Yeah, self-pollinating. These are seedless varieties. There are some that do have seeds, but for the most part, the decopons are all seedless, so they've been grafted onto a hardy rootstock. The nut lemon over there, that thing will produce like 50 seeds in one lemon. It's crazy. There's Meyer lemons. Yeah. So yeah, number 9 is kind of the same thing.
So there's some nasturtiums right there.
Yeah, you'll see that too. So some of these citrus will purge fruit too if it's a little bit too much of an overload for the plant. Sometimes we'll thin it down too, so the decopons we've noticed if we leave 100 or 2 oranges on the trees, they kind of produce this average orange size. But if we thin it down to 20, 30, maybe 40 or 50 on a tree, they produce these massive, I guess, grapefruit looking things. Oh, interesting.
How do you control pollination? How do you
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You wanted pests. What would you say?
About the pollination, you got bees on site that come in and do the pollinating?
So in the greenhouses, some things need pollinators, some don't. A lot of things are wind pollinated or self-pollinated. They just need to be jostled. So we've utilized leaf blowers in tomato houses to get good pollination, but we also bring in bumblebees. So bumblebees are farmed just like honeybees, but they have a much shorter life. Honeybees, you know, you're looking, those colonies can live a long time, but an actual honeybee only lives to be about 40 days or so. So they're constantly repopulating. The bumblebees, they don't really repopulate themselves in the bee boxes that we purchase. So we can get a bee box for anywhere from $100 to $200, and that can do all the pollination for a particular project. Yeah, but
Cost effective.
it is. It can be. So if we have projects where it can be a little bit more time consuming to go in there and hand pollinate, they make little buzzy devices. It looks like a electric toothbrush without the brush on it. And it's mostly used in the breeding department. They vibrate the flower and it drops a little bit of the pollen. And they can take that pollen and they can go and pollinate another plant and make a cross. But to sit there and vibrate every little flower, it starts adding up. All those minutes, all those hours start adding up. Where you can just put a bee box in, it's good for like 2 months, 3 months, and it's good to go. So some of the houses need more than one. So that's where it's kind of like our integrated pest management, like what kind of threshold can we handle economically, whether it's doing it by hand or purchasing a device or an insect to help do the work for us. The pest issues, so with those mealybugs, we release an insect called a Cryptolaemus. It's a little beetle at first, and then the larval stage looks like a really long, giant, fuzzy looking thing. And those go around and those will eat the mealybugs. And then we'll use like a horticultural oil on the trees, and that also helps drown out some of those creatures, those little pest insects. So number 9 is pretty much the same thing. There might be a few different trees here and there that are in the same house. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about. So because we're growing trees inside a greenhouse, you'll see all these little ropes hanging down from these pipes. We have to trellis the trees because they don't get as much movement. Like most trees outside are jostling around with all the wind and everything, and that's like working your muscles out. It gets stronger and stronger. But because some of these fruit, citrus produces on new wood, so it tends to produce on the very end of a branch. So like this branch right here, there's 3 or 4. I've seen upwards of 20 different fruit on one branch. So we have to tie these branches up to these pipes to give it a little extra support. So that's what all these little dangling ropes are. We didn't get to it all before the party. So we'll come in here and slightly tie this up. And even still, we've had branches break with that, but we also have to come in here and top them because once they get up above those pipes, there's nothing else really, unless we went to the roof, you know, but we want to kind of keep these more dwarf. The owner wants to be able to come in here and boom, get himself an orange when they're ready to go. This year we did not top as much as we like to. It's pretty busy here at the farm. We've got maybe, so under our umbrella, there's about 14 employees that we manage. but only about 8 or 10 of them are tending to the greenhouses and gardens. So you got a lot of greenhouses. And 4 of them are Mesa students, which are awesome. We work with an organization that brings in stewards and interns from all over the world. We've got a couple from Cambodia, we got one from Kenya, and one from Peru right now. So they get to spend anywhere from 6 months to a year with us here at the farm and get to kind of shadow us and work with us and help us with the production. They also get to see what's going on in the seed company world. They can learn about seed production, plant production, running a seed company, and then possibly take that knowledge back to their home country to either start their own company, start their own farm, and kind of get a little bit of an inspiration and education here. Yeah, it is the best way to learn. I learned so many things what not to do, and you learn best from your mistakes. And luckily we have a very understanding owner that when we're growing this much stuff, it's hard to be a master of all. You know, when you're growing 3,000 different types of things, it's challenging. But that pretty much wraps it up.
Great school.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, some of the natural stuff that we're...
That acronym you had?
Oh, Jadam.
Jadam. Can you remember that? I can't remember.
Jadam or KNF. Korean natural farming. It has more to do with those IMOs that I was talking about and all the different preparations. It's kind of like biodynamics. There's different preparations that you do at certain times and during certain moon cycles and all this. But Jadam is like a sister, like a brother side skirt, where he was actually working on making fertilizers and pesticides for these like low input methods and applications, something that you can do at the farm. You don't have to be rich to make fertilizers that you can feed to your plants. Right. You don't have to utilize synthetics. You can utilize a lot of the things that are in our natural environment or things that you grow. A lot of permaculturalists utilize comfrey. Comfrey is a dynamic accumulator, and you can take those leaves and either chop them up and put them right on the base and let them kind of rot into the soil, or you can make this nasty smelling ferment and you can dilute that down. Some of the ferments that you make with Jadam can be diluted up to 1,000 times. So you can make a 5-gallon bucket and turn it into 500 gallons of solution or more. It's a little bit goes better than a lot. It's